Hello everyone, thank you for joining us on yet another edition of the Rebound series. My name is Farai Mwakutuya. We've been away for a short while, but we're back and back with a bang, this time focusing on the Auditor General's report on local authorities, the findings of that report on local authorities and the implications that has on service delivery. This edition of the program is brought to you in proud partnership with the Zimbabwe Coalition on Debt and Development. Now, to help me unpack the discussion on that Auditor General's report, I have in the studio two guests and two others who are joining us virtually. In the studio is Honorable Edwin Mushoriwa, Zwarasekwa Member of Parliament. Honorable, great to have you on the program.
Thank you.
Alongside him is also Honorable Patrick Lutiro. He's the legislator for Gurube South. Honorable, great to have you on the program.
Thank you. All right.
Both MPs are members of the Public Accounts Committee of Parliament, but joining us via Zoom, I have Mr. Samuel Jack Matikiti. He's a Research and Advocacy Officer with Transparency International Zimbabwe, and the Acting Chief Internal Auditor of Bulawayo City Council, Mr. Sizo Sitole. Gentlemen, great to have you on the program. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Now, I suppose let's get this discussion rolling. I'll begin with you, Honorable Mshoriwa. We are discussing, obviously, the report that was tabled before Parliament by the Auditor General looking at the finances, the books of local authorities. To get us started, perhaps a brief overview, the key highlights of that report. What were the findings?
Thank you, Farai. The Auditor General report for 2019 has actually mirrored all the other reports that she has actually come up with. Key findings in terms of the report are mainly governance issues and also lack of service delivery. When you talk of governance issues, the Auditor General has actually highlighted that local authorities are failing to adhere to the principles of public finance management as enshrined in the Constitution. They are failing to adhere to even the statutes that govern them, the Urban and the Rural Councils Act. They are also failing to adhere to the various policies that exist within the local authorities. And because of that, service delivery has actually been compromised. The Auditor General has noted, which I think everyone is aware, there's no council in Zimbabwe at the moment that is performing well in terms of service delivery, in terms of water, sewer, in terms of roads. Everything is actually dilapidated, and the situation is actually getting worse year by year.
I'd like you to bring you in, Honorable Lutiro, to respond or obviously add on to what your colleague has said in terms of the findings that that were presented to you and your position or stance as a committee.
Yeah, I think other two issues is what my colleague has highlighted, which the Auditor General actually talked about. He spoke about the inappropriate management of appropriation accounts and as well as the funds accounts. They are not being properly managed by the councils, and as well as the lack of adherence to Environmental Management Act. They are not actually adhering to environmental laws that govern their areas. And if you look at it, if you look at the Auditor General's report,
These highlights have been talked about by the Auditor General time and time again. And the local authorities, they keep on flouting, or they are not even responding positively to the calls by the Auditor General. Year in, year out, the issues are the same. And the other challenge that you also come across is that there are some of the local authorities or some of the councils which are always submitting their audited accounts every year. And there are some councils which are failing to produce the audited accounts every year.
Indeed. I noted in this particular 2019 report that 43 audits were actually in progress, 43 had been completed, 38 were not. And so, as you quite rightly say, and as we were saying earlier, some of these reports date back, some of these accounts that are being reported on date back to 2015, 2016. So that clearly shows that there is a problem there. Let me ask you MPs, you've both said that it's a recurring problem. This is something that has been identified and observed previously many times before. Why does it continue to happen?
I think the local authorities are giving a number of reasons why this is actually recurring every year in and out. They had some challenges previously, according to them. The issue was the issue of staffing, where the councils, especially the rural councils, they could not even afford to pay for a qualified accountant. They could not even afford to pay for an auditor. Their coffers were empty. And they had a very high rate of staff turnover. And it was very difficult for them to do their accounts. And so they're giving that as an excuse for their failure to have audited accounts.
Whose responsibility then is it to ensure that they're adequately resourced? Surely they should see that they require an auditor and advertise for that post, or should it be central government that's creating capacity and ensuring that these institutions are strengthened in that regard?
Well, let me start by saying that one of the major reasons why you are not also seeing an improvement in terms of the issues that are being raised by the Auditor General is actually the lack of adequate or sufficient punishment to the accounting officers in the local authorities and the laissez-faire approach in the management of local authorities, both at the councillor level and also at the management level. That has actually been an issue, and I'm actually glad that the coming in of the Public Finance Management Bill, which is before Parliament, may probably address some of these issues, because some of these people have actually knew that there was nothing really that could happen to them. Then turning to the question of saying who is responsible, my view is that once a person occupies a position of authority, whether you are a councillor, you are a mayor, whether you're the town clerk or a director in a council, you are actually supposed to deliver. And the expectation is that you do your job in a professional manner. So in my view, I think there's no need to split here. They are actually responsible for the rot that is happening.
Let me bring in one of our guests, Mr. HstvZim from the Bulawayo City Council. He's joining us via Zoom from the City of Kings. He's the acting chief internal auditor. Now, one of the issues that has just been pointed out here is that some of these councils, particularly those in rural areas, under-resourced, say that they don't have the capacity or the resources to be able to deliver these accounts. But there are also compliance issues. So yes, you may not be able to audit, but you're supposed to comply with certain procedures. The report points out that there are some procedures, some issues that don't have documentation. So there's no documentation to standard operating procedures. For instance, those don't require human resources or financial resources. There's a misallocation of resources. There's all these issues that crop up that don't necessarily have to do with you having people in place. You sit in a position where you are in that office in a Bulawayo City Council. Perhaps you could tell us the realities on the ground in your own council, but also overall. What are some of the challenges and realities that urban and rural councils face in terms of trying to deliver these accounts?
Thank you very much for that question. Yes, local authorities generally were incapacitated in terms of manpower, but that does not that should not be an excuse for us not to deliver on our mandates. The Auditor General, for instance, talks about this, the governance issues. Yeah, it's one area that needs to be addressed if we are to make progress as local authorities in Zimbabwe. Policies need to be documented. Procedures need to be documented, and they must cover all operations of the local authority, because it's easier when operations are policies and the procedure manuals are documented. It's easier for you as an auditor, because that will be a starting point. That will be a reference point when you're auditing. But if there's nothing documented and we're just operating on the basis of experience or what used to happen in the past, is just practice, it makes it life difficult for auditors also to make any recommendations, because for us to ensure that the system operates effectively, we need to have a reference point, something that we can say, okay, what's the current documented? Where can we make changes? Where can improvements be made? So it's very important, and I like what the Auditor General is emphasizing, the fact that we need to have documented systems in place. That's the starting point. And in our case, as the city of Bulawayo, for instance, I'll tell you that last year, for instance, I think there were about 12 policies that were adopted by council at the instigation of internal audit, because as we audit systems, where we realize that there are no documented policies, there are no documented procedures, we recommend to management that can this be developed, can this be put in place, right? Because it's easier for anybody to manage, even if they say, for instance, it's a case of you want to deal with an issue, it's easier when you refer to a record than just on the basis of this is how it's done, the practice. And on the issue of internal controls, again, it's important that as auditors, even if you are maybe operating alone in a small rural district council, it's important for you to understand what internal controls are. And one area that I believe we as internal auditors calls for us to do more is in terms of professionalizing the internal audit function, right? What we require internal auditors to be certified. It's just like accountants, for instance, accountants, especially in the private sector. Internal auditors in local authorities, most of them, you find that they are designated that position, but they are not necessarily, that person is not necessarily a qualified internal audit. So I believe one way to address some of these issues that we're seeing in local authorities is to employ professional internal auditors, what are called certified internal auditors. Right now in the city in Bulawayo, we are on a drive to ensure that all internal auditors, from junior internal auditors to the senior internal auditor, they are all certified internal auditors. And we believe if we do so, it will enhance and improve the effectiveness of our systems generally in the end. That's what I'll have to call for our audit fraternity in the local authorities, that let's become certified.
Thank you so much, Mr. HstvZim, for weighing in there. I think very valuable insights, very practical insights, and we'll continue to tackle them as we continue with this program. I must stop you because we want to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll be hearing more from our guest. We have Mr. Matikiti from Transparency International Zimbabwe. It will be great to hear him weigh in as well. Stay tuned. It is the Rebound series. We're back shortly.
The report mainly touches on mismanagement, poor internal controls and procedures, which shows that it's not necessarily funds that are to blame for the challenges being faced in terms of service delivery. It shows that there are capacity issues within the local authorities, and we need to seriously examine whether we have the right and qualified people in office. There needs to be a skills audit to ensure that competent management is hired, which is also key to service delivery.
Welcome back. The Rebound series continues. My name is Mwonzora. We are discussing the Auditor General's report on local authorities, implications on service delivery, and what that means in terms of how we address this going forward, because something that has come up is that these reports continue to be adverse, they continue to be shortcomings, and we want to see how they can be resolved conclusively. Before we continue the discussion, we did put a poll out to the public via Twitter and other social media platforms asking various questions. The first one we asked is, are you satisfied with the level of service delivery from your local authority? A staggering 89% said no. Only 11% said yes. We also asked the public, are you aware of or have you seen the Auditor General's report of your local authority? 96% said no, 4% said yes. We also sought to ask, who or what do you think is to blame for poor service delivery by the councils? 14% said it is the councils themselves or the local authorities. 68% said it is the central government. 4% said it is defaulting residents, and 14% blamed it on the economy. I'll be giving you more results of our polls later in the program, but before we proceed and get to that, I want to bring in our other guest, Mr. Samuel Jack Matikiti. He's a research and advocacy officer from Transparency International Zimbabwe. Sir, you've been listening to these issues that have come up. You've obviously had sight of this Auditor General's report. It should be worrying from a point of view of corruption and accountability. What does it mean for us if we continue to see these, issues happening, flouting of regulations, lack of transparency, particularly with regards to ratepayers' funds and service delivery?
Thank you very much. I think first and foremost, what we should understand is the importance of having an Auditor General report each and every day. You will notice that it's a reflection of the social, economic, and political situation on the ground. So sometimes when you talk of corruption in itself, you will notice that it's actually a cancer that is hindering upon service delivery within our country. So once we don't have transparency, once we don't have accountability in terms of the way we govern our institutions, it becomes so problematic. So you would notice that in as much as the Auditor General has actually reflected several issues regarding into the way local are being governed, you notice that there is a lot of recurring issues that are coming yearly, each and every year. And to citizens, civil society organizations, to almost everyone, it's an issue on how best are we trying to implement some of those recommendations from the Auditor Generals. I think one of the biggest challenges, in as much as we are a country, we cannot rule the fact that we have laws in place, we have acts in place that are there to guide the way we are supposed to run some of these organizations. But as a nation, we begin to wonder, to what extent and how best can we ensure that we abide by some of those legal provisions that we have that are there to ensure that there is more transparency, there is more accountability, there is more integration in terms of how these institutions are governed. Then generally to say, when you look at local authorities, they are not there to make profit. That's one thing. Of course, we might talk of a social contract that exists between the general citizens and government. Their government. So when people are not getting their services, that's where we are seeing witnessing all these challenges. In case of Mutano, just said, of course, there were so many issues that came out from the Auditor General's report regarding issues around violation of procurement procedures themselves. In the end, what kind of vis-a-vis the services that we are getting? A lot of funds are being wasted, a lot of funds are being channeled towards unnecessary issues when we are to talk of at the center of whatever services that we might think of within our nation. So in terms of transparency and accountability, yes, of course, we do upload the Auditor General report each and every year because it reflects where we are coming from and where we are going as a nation. And once we reflect from some of those reflection of the findings, what are we doing as a nation in trying to ensure that at least we stay within the confinement of those with confinement that services.
Earlier, Honorable Mwonzora did make mention of the fact that he attributed one of the reasons why we continue to see these challenges is because there aren't adequate punitive measures. Do you think that arrests would address this? What punitive action would be taken, do you think, to make sure that the laws are abided to, people are being brought to book, and we don't continue to see this happening?
Thank you very much. I think that's where one of our weaknesses is when we are to talk of the Auditor General's report is. I think the Auditor General should be awarded more powers. If you are to look at the international or other regional best practice, if you are to look at such extent, you would notice that each and every year the Auditor General produces a report which is tabled before the Parliament, then they discuss, they come up with a recommendation, non-binding recommendations, so to say. That's where the challenge is. So it's really a weakness within our system. What we expect to see is, once the report is out, we expect to see those people who are actually responsible either for siphoning some of those public funds for their own personal gains. Those people, they are supposed to be brought before the process. They're supposed to be. We are supposed to see more of arrests. Why? It really helps to deter people from actually taking or abusing some of those funds. As a nation, I think that's where the most missing part of our laws. Of course, they are there in terms of trying to guide, but action after. We don't want a situation whereby we just make non-binding recommendation or decisions. We want to see people being brought before the court, and whatever action should be taken, so that at least we really know that in the end we can improve in terms of our services, and we can actually recover money that could have been lost through illegal means.
Thank you so much. Let me put it to the MPs who do represent us as citizens at this level. MPs, these reports are brought to you. The challenges are there. There are people who are flouting regulations, people who aren't delivering service. Water, for instance, several councils, as you made mention, water is a big issue, yet it is a human right. These reports are condemning certain actions, are exposing glaring inadequacies and challenges and poor governance. What are you doing to ensure that the people's requirements and expectations are met, that they are getting the service, that these challenges that are constant are actually addressed?
I think the most important issue is what you have been alluding to your survey. Generally, people don't take part in these civic issues. They don't take part in their local authority activities. They don't take part in the budget consultations of their local authorities. They simply choose to ignore or not to take part as and when these budget consultations are being done. So that deprives them of the knowledge and their power in terms of calling for some of the service delivery to be serviced to them. Mm-hmm. So lack of participation by the people is also a very big challenge. Mm-hmm. So I think through the councillors, it is the duty and onus of us to go and address our people the issue of the open budget system, where the citizens must participate, where we must enforce a quorum to a particular ward. If such number of people do not attend, definitely the meeting and budget consultations must not go through.
Before I ask you to come in, Honorable Mwonzora, let me ask the Bulawayo City Council, what are your observations in terms of citizen participation in issues of budget, in issues of holding you to account? Are there mechanisms to ensure that citizens participate and also are able to hold councils to account?
Yes, I believe that in the city of Bulawayo, there is participation by ratepayers, residents. You find, for instance, that groupings such as residents associations, advocacy groups such as civil society, industry associations, vendors associations, they're always requesting information on service delivery issues, budget information from the city management. And in these associations, and at times, even management, management, they've also taken the initiative to engage these, these representatives of various of ratepayers on issues going on in council interest or concern to ratepayers. And for instance, there are times when the same associations, they query certain council decisions, how they've been arrived at, and ask for investigations. We have, for instance, as internal audit, conducted a number of investigations initiated by groups such as the AAG, the Affirmative Action Group, and the residents associations. We've actually done a number of investigations based on their own initiative, on their own investigations, and we've conducted these investigations involving even policymakers, councillors themselves, senior management. We've carried out all these investigations coming from from residents associations. So I believe they are really playing a critical role in terms of ensuring that council is accountable to themselves, because councillors are voted in by the residents. I would believe that right now, for instance, last week, I think 2 weeks ago, we had a stakeholder meetings where with a number of these groupings coming in to find out what is going on in council. Can you give us the answers and so forth? So I'd like to think that these residents are showing an interest in how council is run.
Let me just ask you there very quickly, the fact that these people had to ask and demand this information, is it an indication that perhaps you were not the council was not forthcoming with it?
It could be, yeah. It could be. I recall at one time, for instance, the town clerk and the communications, the corporate communications, his corporate communications section, they had scheduled meetings on a quarter, meaning they would back whatever in relation to budget decisions, strategic planning issues to back to the residents. But I think unfortunately.
Thank you so much there, Mr. Stoller. The connection is getting a bit bad, but certainly we did get the gist of what you were saying there. We need to take a short break. When we come back, it will be our final segment. And, as in the spirit of this program, we now want to chart a way forward. We want to find solutions and say, how do we address this? How do we fix this? Because at the end of the day, it is service delivery. It is human rights that are being, trampled on, that are being deprived. That's all. That we all want to focus on that and make sure that that is delivered at the end of the day. My name is Farai Mwakutuya. It is the Rebound series. We'll be back very shortly.
I think one major concern on the Auditor General's report was something that she actually stated, saying that there was inadequate record keeping, which is a common feature within the ministries, departments, and agencies. And it's quite shocking that they don't have updated or reliable information. For example, during the COVID-19 crisis, on donations received or distributed, and so much more. So, the fact is, if we fail to keep records, across government departments or ministries or entities, it becomes a challenge in terms of transparency and accountability. Who is then accountable for the resources that come within a ministry or department or agency? And we definitely need to have that transparency so that we know what's coming in and what's going out. Also shocking is, how can we not have updated or reliable information on all the resources that are coming within the different ministries if, we need to look at the different technologies that we already have that will make sure that we have this updated information. So, what's also shocking is that, the country's capital city, which is Harare, does not have an updated asset register, which means that the city does not know all the assets that it has. And that is, it's completely unacceptable at the end of the day. How do we create, transparent record keeping? And how do we make sure that even the citizens, if they're going to ask for an account of the assets that each city has, they'll be able to be provided that information? How do we make progress as a country if we can't keep something simple as records?
Welcome back to the Rebound series, today focusing on the Auditor General's report into local authorities, implications on service delivery. Honourable Patrick Lutiro, Kurwe South Member of Parliament, Honourable Edwin Mushoriwa, Ziora Member of Parliament, Samuel Jack Matikiti from Transparency International, and Mr. Sizo Stole, Acting Chief Internal Auditor from the Bulawayo City Council, are my guests in the studio. Honourable Mushoriwa, we've seen the report, we've seen the challenges. How do we now fix this? What is being done? What are you as parliamentarians doing to ensure that some of these challenges are resolved?
Well, let me start by saying Parliament, like I said earlier, there's a consideration of the Public Finance Bill which is underway, and there's also inquiry into the Procurement Act, so that at least some of these things are actually looked into. But one of the things that we also need to do in Zimbabwe, we need to move from the type of governance in our local authorities. What do I mean? If you check a company like, for instance, the CBZ, if you look at the board of directors, if you look at the level of management, it's let's say $1 million company. There is no local authority in Zimbabwe which is not a billion entity. And because we are dealing with a billion, like for instance, Zimbabwe, Harare, for instance, or Bulawayo, it's a trillion, more than a trillion, a business entity. Now, what we are doing in local authorities is that we are putting poor policymakers, we are putting poor management to oversee a huge business empire. And this is the reason why I agree with the author from Bulawayo to simply say that we need to ensure that we treat local authorities as business entities, though with the social or as non-profiting entities, but we need to enhance professionalism. And this is one of the things that we want to do. And as Parliament and Public Accounts Committee, you'll be seeing when you do our report, those are some of the issues that we'll be highlighting, because we believe that most of the issues that we are facing failing because we've got people that believe that they are just there for getting employment. It's a laissez-faire approach. I get my salary at the end of the day, nothing happens to me, I'm not fired, I'm not disciplined, I don't go to jail, I will just be pardoned. That's the spirit that is happening.
Honourable Lutiro, will the Public Finance Management Bill address these issues of ensuring that we have the right resources, the right skills running these entities so that we don't have these challenges?
Farai, munhu afanirwe kunyanyo tongwa nemutemo. Temberi yemunhu unova moyo wake nokuda nyika yake ndo unofanirwa kunge uchimutonga. Kuba kwakaipa unofanirwa kunge uchizviziva. Whether pane mutemo kana kuti hapana mutemo. Tingaiise mitemo igowanda togoti munhu anogona kugara mugore million years. Kana munhu afunga zvokusada nyika yake, anoramba achingoba. Nokuti kuba mucherechedzo wekuti hauna hanya nevanhu vawakamirira nevanhu vauri kusevenzera. Ndiri kuti inini panofanirwa kuva nechivimbo chakasimba pakati pevagari nevashandi vanenge vari mukanzuro. Ibasa rekuti iko zvino tiise vanhu vanokwanisa kumirira vanhu vakavimbika kumabasa. Kana zvichikwanisika kuti paite matraining zvakare ekudzosera nekushandura pfungwa dzevanhu kuti quick back haina chainobatsira. Vanhu vave nechivimbo nekanzuru yavo. Munowanika vanhu vachibvunza kukanzuru zviri kuitika mabudgets kuti akamira sei. Munowanika vanhu vachibhadhara mitero yavo nokuti vanenge vachiziva kuti mitero chashanda chakati nechakati nechakati. Mutemo tingaiisa tigoiisa asi vanhu vanogona kupedzisira vatozara mumajeri yogoita tsika yekuba yatinofanira kupedza mumakanzuru. Tinofanirwa kuva nechivimbo chakasimba nekanzuru yedu, togovawo zvakare iyo kanzuru igova nekusimba nevagari vanenge vari munharaunda yavo, nokuti ndivanoita kuti nharaunda igone kuendera mberi zvakanaka sekanzuru.
Thank you for that. One of the observations that also come from the Auditor General's report is that councils need to, the recommendations is councils must adhere to ministerial directives. We know from previous experience, from what we hear, that sometimes there could be some conflict or challenges between central government, local government, and these authorities. Can that be resolved? Can we see some of these challenges being resolved until there's harmony between the two? And according to the polls, as we put there, 68% of the people that we polled believe that central government is to blame for poor service delivery. So until we get that harmony, can we kiss these problems goodbye realistically?
No, in fact, the issue of ministerial directives is actually something that Parliament will need to consider. It's not only that local authorities, even recently with the Chief Executive of ZESA, Dr. Gata, who came and told us that the problems that they were facing in ZESA were because of ministerial directives. One of the things that we needed to do as Parliament, and that's what we are now advocating. We now want to advocate for a system, a transparent mechanism, where the laws and the powers of the minister, the powers of a council, everything, especially when we discuss and debate the devolution bill, which is coming, we need to make sure that there is actually a clean system of governance, so that we don't continue to have a blame game, where the town clerk will blame the councillor will blame the minister will, everybody point the finger to the other. We need a new system, and the new system, and we are going to hope when the devolution bill, when we start to go through it, and when it is tabled and given to the public to look at it, we believe they should come up with a mechanism to ensure that this blame game should actually come to a stop.
Also ensuring that they are binding recommendations, as Mr. Matikiti mentioned earlier. These recommendations must be binding. If we say this is the recommendation or this is the course of action, there must be timelines, there must be consequences if they are not met. As Parliament, are you also working to ensure that the Auditor General's office has more teeth, that they can go after these people, or action can be taken? Yeah,
I think that's very true. If you look at the new bill, it has those clauses where the CEO, you know that the CEO or the town clerk now has only 2 terms, and the second term is only renewable as a result of performance, which must be done. And if you look at the public hearings that we had on the public finance management bill, people were even suggesting that if somebody else is caught or is accused of corruption, I think all his property must be sold to recover the stolen funds. I think that's part and parcel of the teeth that we have in the bill.
Very last, well, as we head towards wrapping up, let me ask you, Mr. Stole, there's obviously, again, in part of the polls that we were asking, what do you think is to blame? Is it the bad governance in councils? Is it ratepayers that are not paying? So you spoke about engagement earlier and the need, for citizens to play a role, for residents to be engaged and involved. If they are not meeting their obligations by paying their rates, to what extent are you hampered or hamstrung as councils, and are you able to then deliver on those services?
It's important that ratepayers also play their part, right? At the same time, they must hold council to account, but they also must play their part. Meaning, if they contribute, they make their raise payments on a monthly basis, and then it will be easier for them to demand the kind of services that they would like to see. But if they are defaulting on payments, it makes it difficult for them again to hold council to hold council and management to account, because there will be excuses that will be given by management and councillors. So I think it's critical that ratepayers also play their role in terms of making payments, and then when they're paid, it's easier for them to say, okay, we paid, and you deliver. And if you don't deliver, maybe they can take some other action. So I think both parties should play their role, and it's critical that ratepayers also to make that contribution and then demand the kind of services that they require from council.
Mr. Matikiti, yes, ratepayers being called on to meet their obligations, to pay their dues, to do what they must, their duty as responsible and patriotic and upstanding citizens. But if you continue to pay rates and put it into councils and local authorities that, according to the Auditor General, don't have procedures, don't have documentation for simple things, that are flouting procurement regulations, that are, I remember seeing Bindura who paid for, I think, a piece of equipment in 2018. Bindura municipality paid 90,850 towards acquisition of a front-end loader in December 2018. Up to 2020, it had not been delivered. So ratepayers will say, we'll pay, but if we are we are literally throwing it into a deep hole and it will never come out.
Thank you very much. I think you would notice that there is an increase in terms of awareness when it comes to social accountability. It seems as if in Zimbabwe, if we are to look at major cities that we have, if you look at Harare, Chitungwiza, Bulawayo, Mutare, Bweru, there's now engagement in terms of local authorities, citizens, and resident association, which is key as well if you are to talk of social accountability. And it really helps to actually reflect or actually identify some of the gaps within the local authorities, which is actually good, and we actually applaud that. However, it shouldn't end at that point. But however, that kind of harmony is necessary and is key to ensure that at least citizens will be able to challenge where they will feel that their councils, they are not actually delivering better services to them. But however, generally, there is one I wanted to comment earlier on, that it's not sometimes all about a blame to citizens themselves. But however, I noticed that it has become a trend whereby there's actually lack of information dissemination when you are to look at how city councils are operating. They are not actually delivering information which is so convincing to the citizens so that they will be able to actually pay their rates. Yes, of course, there are some efforts that have been done by several councils in terms of trying to ensure that at least people should come forth and pay their rates so that at least service delivery can be improved. However, that information dissemination is not adequate enough, so to say. Then at the same time, I noticed that at one point in time, there are always these power dynamics within the local authorities where we are saying we might have our councillors, at the same time we might have the management vis-a-vis the town clerk. They are always sometimes fighting to such an extent that information that comes from the councillors will be different to information that has been provided sometimes by the management. And at one point in time, if we have to talk, there was one speaker who once talked about issues to do with budget consultation. You notice at one point in time, especially in terms of Mutare, time to give a very practical example, there's a tendency whereby the council can just come with already pre-decisions to the citizens, which in the end you find civil society organizations trying to challenge. So in terms of the quality of engagement, in terms of the quality of consultation, we are still even lagging behind. We expect that when these guys, they want to consult from their citizens, they should come openly and with that mind to try and ensure that at least whatever that is going to come out from the citizens, it will actually really help in terms of overall decision making, which will help in terms of service delivery.
Thank you so much, Mr. Matikiti, for that. Unfortunately, because of time, we must end our discussion here, but I want to thank all my guests for coming through. Honorable Patrick Lutiro, Gurua South, Member of Parliament. Honorable Edwin Mushoriwa, Ziwarasekwa legislator, is the Member of Parliament for Ziwarasekwa in Harare. Mr. Matikiti, who we've just heard from, a Research and Advocacy Officer, Transparency International Zimbabwe, and the Acting Chief Internal Auditor for Bulawayo City Council, Mr. Sizo Stoli. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for being part of the program.
Thank you.
As I said, because of time, we must end our discussion here. But next week, we'll be bringing you the views of the people, the residents, the citizens themselves. We'll be going to the streets to see just how bad service delivery is and hearing the voices of ordinary citizens in terms of what they desire and what action they think they can take in terms of getting their desires met. My name is Farai Mwakutuya. The Rebound series today has been brought in proud partnership with the Zimbabwe Coalition on Debt and Development. Be sure to join me again next time. Bye-bye.